Because in the tax protest movement or the patriot movement, you oftentimes hear the term or the statement made that the tax code does not tell us what the income tax is. Nowhere in the tax code is there a definition of income tax. Well, that's not true. The tax code does have the definition of the income tax contained in it, but most people who are not trained in law can't find it. So let me point it out to you. Here in the Idaho State Tax Code, the Supreme Court, in a case called Idaho, this is Diefendorf versus Gallet, this is the Idaho Supreme Court, they said income is defined as, all right, now get your pen and paper out. Sharpen your pencil on both ends, because here comes the definition for income. In case you've always wondered, what is it? Now I'm going to tell you. Income is defined as something. Write that down. S-O-M-E-T-H-I-N-G. You got it right straight out of the Supreme Court of Idaho. Income is something. And whatever this something is, it is derived from property. Got that? I knew you'd love it. Income is defined as something derived from property, labor, skill, ingenuity, or sound judgment, or from two or more in combination. Cited in Stony Brook Rail Corporation versus Boston and Maine Railroad Company. 260 Massachusetts, 379. So the Idaho Supreme Court cited it from the Massachusetts Supreme Court. Now, the income tax has been around for a long time. You see that in Schaefer versus Carter. Yeah, the very first income tax imposed in the United States was in New York State in 1778. Did you get that? Write it down. 1778, New York State, first income tax. That's just 2 years after the Declaration of Independence. Now, the same meaning, this court goes on to say, appears to have attached to the term property in all subsequent taxing legislation and in the taxing practices of the executives, and we take judicial notice. Judicial notice. That means you don't have to come in here and prove this. We take judicial notice. It's common knowledge in law that income as such has never been assessed or taxed as property in the state of Idaho. Common knowledge, common practice. Courts take judicial notice that income has never been assessed or taxed as property. Income is not property. Now here's an interesting concept. Did you know that property has never been assessed or taxed in the United States of America under our Constitution? Yeah, that's right. See, property is a right. Rights can't be taxed. So there's something about this income. Did you know that income is called an excise tax? Just two kinds of taxes, two types of taxes. Under our Constitution, we have two taxes. It's direct and indirect. Isn't that amazing? That's easy to learn. Direct and indirect. It's almost like up and down, left and right, direct and indirect. Well, a direct tax is where we come to everybody and we say everybody pays $2. That's a direct tax. But an indirect tax is a tax where, like gasoline, we go in and buy a gallon of gasoline for $1.25, and there's 43 taxes on that, but you don't know what those taxes are. Those are called hidden taxes. Somebody else paid the tax, and then he just passed it on in the cost of goods sold. Now, on page 633 of Diefendorf versus Gallet, listen to this. This is a real neat statement. It says, income is necessarily the product of the joint efforts of the state and the recipient of the income, the state furnishing the protection necessary to enable the recipient to produce, receive, and enjoy it, and a tax thereon in the last analysis is simply a portion cut from the income and appropriated by the state as its share thereof. Isn't that real special? Listen to this again. Sharpen your pencil. Listen up. Income is necessarily the product of the joint efforts of the state and the recipient of the income. Now, what is it when we have a joint effort? You know, if you and I were working together in a joint effort, what would we call that? It's called a partnership. So income is necessarily the product of the partnership of the state and the recipient of the income. You, Joe Sixpack, receive an income. And this income is not property. Because if it was property, Joe, we couldn't tax it. So whatever it is that you're doing to create and produce this income, it isn't property, and you have no property right in this income. Now, you know, in olden days, we didn't make income, we made increase, and we paid a tithe on our increase, which was property. Today, we pay a tax. We pay a tax on our income, which is not property. It's an excise privilege that we receive from government. Now, we have converted then our right to property to an excise privilege. Here's the next statement, or the next sentence. It says, the state furnishes the protection necessary to enable the recipient to produce, receive, and enjoy it. So the state, one of your two partners here in this limited general partnership, furnishes the protection necessary. Necessary protection. What kind of protection did you need, Joe? Oh, you needed unemployment insurance, workman's compensation, and 108 benefits under the Social Security program called the safety net. Remember, George Bush said what Americans want are jobs, 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 and we have to have a safety net. Well, gee, Joe, you got to pay for the safety net, don't you? And so we pay an income tax, which is an excise tax on a joint venture, a partnership between you and the state furnishes the protection, the insurance, the limited liability necessary to enable you, Joe, the recipient, to produce, receive, and enjoy this income. Isn't that just real special? The state makes it possible for you to produce, receive, and enjoy this income. Not property, income. A franchise. So the tax, this income tax thereon, in the last analysis, is simply a portion cut from the income and appropriated by the state as its share thereof. Hey, you know, you got a partner, and your partner, he produces something in this partnership to enable you to make this income. And so the state comes along and says, gee, Joe, shouldn't you pay me a portion? So if you're wondering why the state takes, in some cases, 72%, 43%, 45%, 38%, the state is just taking its share of a partnership agreement. Now, I know you're probably sitting there saying, well, why? I never made any agreement with the government. Well, you didn't make any agreement that you knew about. But you have an agreement. You have a partnership. You have a contract. In fact, you have a contract in writing. Yeah, that's right. It's in writing. A written contract. It's called Social Security. Social Security. Now listen to this. In Labor and Labor Relations, cited from 48 American Jurisprudence, 2nd edition, Section 1. I'm on page 80. In labor laws, the term labor may be used in a comprehensive sense as including those who toil with their brains as well as those performing manual work. So whether you're working as an insurance salesman or agent, or whether you're digging ditches or driving a truck, in labor laws, the term labor may be used in a comprehensive sense as including those who toil with their brains as well as those performing manual work. So if you're working at a bank, that's called labor. Now, the constitutional protection of your right to work is in Section 2, when it says the right to labor and to its protection from unlawful interference is a constitutional as well as a common law right. Every man has a natural right to the fruits of his own industry. Isn't that kind of neat? So the right to labor and to its protection from unlawful interference is a constitutional as well as a common law right. The common law goes clear back to Moses at Mount Sinai. And a constitutional right goes back to 1787. And every man, and that includes you ladies too, and every woman has a natural right to the fruits of your own industry. What you create and produce is yours.